Part 6, Chapter 11 and 12. Chapter 11, Disposition. There were countless impressions to process. Her head felt swollen, her nerves throbbed. In her sleep, Jiyan tossed and turned repeatedly until she fell off the couch and was forced awake. The pain in her spine was relentless, creeping all the way down to her toes. Sitting on the floor, she gathered herself. A glance out the window showed her that dawn had already set in some time ago. Today, it was foggy. She pressed her hands over her ears and lowered her head onto her knees. The images wouldn't disappear properly. What was she supposed to do? Dozens of thoughts raced through her mind. What had Kilan meant by hatred? Several images flashed rapidly before her mind's eye. A scream, and the question why echoed in her memory. Would the flow of thoughts never stop? She stood up immediately. Instead of sneaking out of the house, she ran outside without checking whether anyone was watching her. Even outdoors, she didn't slow down. On the contrary, she sped up. She needed the movement. The energy that had built up inside her had to come out. Where to? The thought shot through her head. Nowhere, and yet somewhere. Her steps gradually slowed as her lungs began to burn. How long had she been running? She tilted her head back. The sky was clearing little by little. Her view of the Slivons opened up. They were especially active, racing from one place to another. Some of them hovered close together, as if performing a dance with one another. What had thrown them into such an uproar? Were they reflecting her thoughts? The higher the sun climbed, the calmer the Slivons became. Their earlier force gradually faded. Light reflected off their bodies and dazzled her. Where did these beings truly come from, and for what purpose were they here? Had anyone ever asked themselves the same questions and found the answers? She barely knew anything about them. Jiyan? Her heart skipped a beat as she turned around. Kilan was walking toward her. His clothes had been changed, his hair done. Had he even slept? When she replayed the previous evening in her mind, she remembered that Kilan had reacted just as surprised as she had to Kilan's revelation. Well then, enjoying the fresh morning air too? Wonderful weather for stalking, isn't it? She put on a strained smile. After he reached her, they began walking at the same pace. Kilan glanced sideways at her. What are you doing out here? Clearing my head and then going shopping, she replied. And you, besides stalking? He still didn't rise to her provocation. He sighed. Are you satisfied now? That you have told Kilan the truth? She asked. It's not about me being satisfied. It's about Kilan knowing the truth and being able to decide for himself. But yes, I'm proud of you. It was the right decision to be honest with him. She slapped her flat hand hard against his back. This time, she smiled sincerely. He fell silent and looked straight ahead. Still, it's strange, she continued. She clasped her hands behind her back and stretched. If the Seers really live outside the city, why don't the Slivons, or rather, the Sins, attack them? Or are the Slivons deliberately spreading the rumor that the Seers live outside? If that assumption is correct, then we need to wait before leaving the city. Or rather, prepare better. What do you think? Suddenly, he grabbed her hand, and she flinched internally. Come with me. I'll show you something. When they reached the beach, Kilan let go of her. Why had he brought her here? As far as she could see, there was nothing suspicious or interesting. Should she have resisted and not come along? Still, the clear sea air was heavenly for her nerves, and the sand felt soft, so much so that she wanted to take off her shoes. Kilan bent down and picked up an unremarkable stone. He threw it at a precise angle so that it skipped across the water. Wondering what he was trying to demonstrate, she paused and watched silently. He picked up another stone and threw it. He repeated the process at least 7 times until he achieved the desired result. The final throw was the best. The stone skipped across the water for a long time, leaving circles behind that briefly distracted her. It seemed as if the last stone would travel even farther, but at the final moment, it slowed. A brief flash of light flickered, and the stone sank. A force field? Jiyan murmured. Her mouth fell open. Taking another stone, Kilan tossed it into the air and caught it deftly. Correct. The city is surrounded by a force field. We're trapped? She interrupted. Goosebumps spread across her entire body. It felt as though something was tightening inside her head. The air grew thin. The mere idea of captivity unsettled her so deeply that she shifted her weight from one leg to the other every second. This time, Kilan didn't throw the stone with the same precision. It sank into the water immediately. No, we're not. Anyone is free to leave the city whenever they want. But nobody does. Why? She had unconsciously taken a step toward him, her hand clenched into a fist. He turned to her. Can you say for certain what's beyond the force field? What? What if the force field falsifies the images of what's outside? He asked, waiting for her reaction. She lowered her head and shoulders. So that means it's not peaceful out there? We can't trust our own eyes, and everything we see beyond it is an illusion. Did the Slivons know about this? The president? Who had built the force field, and for what purpose? To protect the city? To deceive those inside? Or for some other motive? That's exactly why I say we should be content with our current lives. She heard Kilan say. As it is now, it's best. The urge to want more only makes everything worse. We have the privilege of eating together, sharing our feelings, breathing the same air. That's enough. But people like Kilan, and you, can't stop striving for more. You always want more and more. You're never satisfied. I don't understand you. She lifted her head and glared at him venomously. How could this secretive life be enough for him? Being content with everything and never fighting for anything will make you suffer forever. You'll always be a prisoner of yourself and never move forward. Her voice grew louder. Her body tensed. And never being satisfied makes you sick sooner or later, he shouted back, clenching his teeth. The veins and bones in his neck stood out sharply. For several seconds, they stood facing each other, staring, letting the wind pass between them. Just as he couldn't convince her, she wouldn't be able to convince him either. Right? Why was it still so important to her to change his mind? 3 hours, 35 minutes, and 6 seconds. Out of nowhere, a young girl rose from the sand, holding a stopwatch in her hand. The sand that had buried her flowed down the sides as she abruptly sat up. Kilan and Jiyan stared at her at once. "That's how long Jade Fisher, stayed undetected. New record!" the girl shouted cheerfully. Her short hair, reaching the nape of her neck, was the same color as the golden sand. 2 clips held her bangs back. She was petite and small. Kilan moved instantly, and before Jade could register his shadow and lift her head, he grabbed her by the collar and yanked her up. "How much did you hear?" Jade stared at him silently, eyes wide, then blinked several times. "Your eyes are different colors. How beautiful." "I asked you something." Looking closer, Jiyan noticed the black plugs in Jade's ears. She quickly grabbed the hem of Kian's jacket. He turned to her, and she shook her head. Immediately, he let Jade go, and she landed on her backside. She quickly pulled the earplugs out. "What's your name, 2-colored one?" Jade asked first. Jiyan was completely ignored. From up close, Jiyan could see that Jade had brown eyes. For a moment, she wasn't sure whether she was looking at a girl or a very feminine, delicate boy. Only the hair clips made her certain it was a girl. "What's a girl doing here alone at this time?" Kilan asked in return. His tension had eased. His voice softened. "You should go home." Jade pursed her lips briefly. "You don't want to tell me your name? Fine. Then you're just the pretty 2-colored. "Were you meditating?" Jiyan joked. Jade looked at her and laughed. "No, nonsense. I became one with nature and perfected my camouflage ability because—" She raised her fist. "I'm going to be the world's best sin soldier. I just have to wait a year until I'm of age and allowed to apply. That takes too long." She ruffled her hair. "Way too long." Jiyan and Kilan exchanged a glance. "With those skinny arms and legs, you'll 100% become a fighter." Jiyan teased, squatting down so they were face to face. She rested her chin on her palm. "Someone else who wants to join the sins." Again. Sitting cross-legged, Jade stared ahead. "I have to succeed. My 2 wishes have to come true. Save my best friend and... Jiyan pressed when she fell silent. Jade shook her head. "Not important. I have to improve. Become the best." She stood up and brushed the sand off her backside. "I'll do it. Just wait. I'll come back and save you. I promised." Her cheeks flushed, and her gaze, fixed on the sea, was empty. Out of the corner of her eye, Jiyan noticed a shadow. In an instant, someone jumped onto Kian's back, wrapping arms and legs around him. "Hey," he greeted with a wide grin, pressing his cheek against Kian's. Let go!" Kilan shouted, shaking him off. "What's wrong with you? Have you lost your mind?" Landing on the ground, the boy rubbed his neck. He wore sporty clothes. His shoes were dirty, and his face bore several scratches. How long and where had he been running? "Well, I figured Jade's friends are my friends too." "Amir," Jade growled. "I just met these people. Why do you keep doing such embarrassing things? Apologize to the 2-colored one. The poor guy nearly had a heart attack." When Amir stood up, he towered over Jiyan and Kilan. He was so pale that she thought he looked sick. His hair, a mix of blonde and brown, stuck up at the nape of his neck. He didn't seem to care about Jade's words at all. His green eyes were fixed on Kilan. "Everything okay, brother?" he called out, holding out his hand apologetically, still grinning. "Forgive and forget? We're leaving." Hastily, Kilan grabbed Jiyan by the wrist. His grip hurt. "We have things to do. Bye." Kilan dragged Jiyan along, who turned back toward Jade and Amir. At first, they returned her look and waved at her kindly. She subtly lifted the corners of her mouth into a smile and waved back, without Kilan noticing. Eventually, they looked away. Jade had her arms crossed over her chest and was tapping her foot, while Amir raised his hands placatingly. From a distance, Jiyan couldn't hear their voices. She wished she knew what they were talking about. Making friends with the Slivon could possibly... "I don't want to spend another second in the same place as them," Kilan hissed, his gaze dripping with contempt. "It's bad enough that we have to breathe the same air." "They seem nice. What if we're doing the Slivons an injustice? Slivons don't have their own character by nature, right? If they're in an animal, they're the animal. And if they're in a human, they adapt to human nature. You can't deny that." Kilan stopped and released her hand. "Do you feel sympathy for these monsters? For these beings who stole our lives? You sympathize with those who have shown you illusions since birth." "No, I'm trying to reflect on everything. She took a deep breath. She felt that one wrong word could make the situation escalate, and she didn't like throwing him off balance. The Slivons stole human lives and destroyed themselves again and again. Yes. But what did humans do to drive them so far into a corner that it came to this? The thought raced through her mind, refusing to settle, sending a tingling sensation through her entire body. Humans weren't flawless. No one was. She decided to keep these thoughts to herself. Not every human is the same. Doesn't that apply to Slivons too? He turned away with a hiss. If you believe that for even one more second, you're beyond help. Chapter 12. Two Factions. 3 weeks had passed. It was evening. Carrying the steaming pot to the table, Kilan and Kilan waited in silence. Their gazes rested on her, something she didn't particularly like. First, Jiyan filled Kilan's plate, then Kian's, who didn't look pleased. Admittedly, the stew didn't look very inviting. The vegetable pieces were cut unevenly and crookedly. The spices floated on the surface, and the liquid should have been red, but instead it was a yellowish orange. Had she added too little tomato paste? Before she could wish them a good appetite, Kilan had already begun. "Very delicious," he praised. Jiyan's lips curved upward instantly, and a warm feeling spread through her lower abdomen. "Enjoy it!" She pressed out after glancing at Kilan, who was moving the spoon back and forth. "How long do you plan on refusing?" Since the very beginning, he hadn't touched a single dish she'd made. He let go of the spoon, pushed the plate away, and leaned back. "You only ever manage half measures. Are you aware of that?" "What?" You know the basics, sure, but in no area do you actually seem to be good. Turning back to her food, she avoided his gaze. She didn't bother blowing on it and took a bite, nearly burning her tongue. No idea what you mean. Your combat techniques, for example, he continued. They're not bad, but you lose your composure as soon as something unpredictable happens. She sighed, her appetite gone. I didn't attend the course for long. I was more interested in the volleyball club, and since I hardly had any time, I had to quit some other activities. Your interests seem rather broad, he replied. What was he doing? Analyzing her? Out of the corner of her eye, she could see that Kilan continued eating unfazed, watching them. Was he used to their clashes? She lifted her head and held still for a moment. Then she smiled faintly. No, I just don't know what to do with myself. That's the difference. Anyway, that doesn't matter now. Just try the food already. Your refusal is an insult to me. She stood up and held the spoon out to him. Now I'm being fed? He rolled his eyes. Don't be so shy, she called out, deliberately making her voice sound overly friendly. She kept holding the spoon out and pushed the plate closer to him, so close that part of the rim hovered over the floor. Was he still holding a grudge because she'd spoken positively about the Slivons? Since that day, he hadn't said a single word about it. When he stubbornly refused, she put him in a headlock, while he somehow managed to grab her cheek and tug on it. Neither of them paid attention, and the plate lost its balance. The stew, now cooled, spilled straight onto his pants and splashed onto his top. He sighed. The wasted food, she murmured. Jiyan traced the trails of stew with his finger and finally tasted it. It's okay. I expected something worse. Then he stood up, some of the liquid dripping onto the floor. If you'll excuse me, I'm going to take a shower now. Thank you, Jiyan. He shot her a surly look. She rubbed the back of her head, putting on a strained smile. As soon as he was out of sight, she rolled her eyes. She would have loved to stick her tongue out at him. Why is he thanking you for that? Kilan asked, confused, as he put the last piece of bread into his mouth. He's happy you got him dirty? He tilted his head and pondered for a while, seemingly reaching no conclusion. Then he clasped his hands together. As always, it was delicious. Thank you very much. An amused smile crossed her face. Suddenly, she became alert. A familiar sound echoed. Instantly, she and Kilan looked at each other. Rain! Without losing a second, both jumped up and ran to the door. Quickly throwing on jackets and grabbing an umbrella, they rushed outside. Kilan opened it and she joined him beneath it. Do you think Jiyan will be mad that we left without saying anything? She asked eventually. Kilan shook his head. We're just going for a walk, and we'll be back before the rain stops. Without thinking twice, she clung to his arm and looked up at him. He didn't seem to mind. The rhythmic sound of raindrops hitting the umbrella filled her with contentment. It's raining buckets, she said. His eyes widened. There are buckets up there? Forget it. She laughed. He frowned. You sometimes speak in riddles. She didn't know how long they'd been walking, but time seemed to fly. Eventually, they came across a photo booth that looked quite old and out of place. Did anyone even use it? It looked abandoned, as if no one cared whether it broke down or not. Yet no one ever removed it. She'd passed by it many times before. "Should we take photos together?" she asked him. He stared at the booth. "We'll look suspicious if we use it." "No one's around," she persuaded him, and they moved closer. Once there, Jiyan slid her finger into a slot. By now, she was used to having her fingerprint scanned. She remembered how astonished she'd been the first time she went shopping. One fingerprint, and she was allowed to take everything. Kilan folded the umbrella and leaned it against the booth outside. Both of them squeezed onto the seat meant for one person. Pressed close together, they began taking the first snapshots. The old booth worked perfectly. At first, they pulled strange faces, which soon turned into genuine laughter. He occasionally poked her in the sides to make her smile in the photos, and she did the same to him. They got so caught up in the fun that they didn't listen to the instructions at all. The metallic voice droned past their ears. Eventually, the fun ended, and a photo was automatically selected after they hesitated too long, arguing with each other. From the lower compartment came out a chain with a pendant. Opening it, she saw their shared photo inside. In the picture, they were gazing deeply into each other's eyes, grinning. That moment was captured for eternity. "It turned out nice," he admitted. His eyes shone. He looked at the photo far too long. Without hesitation, she opened the clasp of the chain and put it around his neck. "Here, it's a gift for you." "But as a thank you for letting me forget everything else for a few minutes," she interrupted. "It suits you." He lifted the chain and studied Jiyan. "No one has ever given me a gift before. I'll take good care of it. Thank you." They looked at each other for a long time. "You're welcome," she said softly. She stood up and let him pass. Once again, under the umbrella, they continued walking. It was time to head back. Her heart felt warm seeing how happy he was about the necklace. He'd been holding it for a while, looking at it as they walked. Eventually, he tucked it away under his jacket. Suddenly, Jiyan spotted people holding signs in the air. Both of them stopped. "Since when do Slivons go out during thunderstorms?" she asked, puzzled. Kilan tensed. "They must be brave Slivons. Look, they're holding a demonstration." The signs read, "Away with electricity." If electricity harms the Slivons, why doesn't the president abolish it? She wondered. What's stopping him? Shouldn't he stand by his people? Out of the corner of her eye, she saw him nod. True, but maybe he needs the power for some reason. It's better if we keep moving. Out of nowhere, it grew louder. The air vibrated. Kilan tilted the umbrella back so they could look at the sky. For minutes, they kept their eyes on it, but nothing unusual appeared. The source of the sound seemed to come from all directions, yet their gaze remained fixed upward. Suddenly, her pulse quickened as she spotted people dressed in black. CRs! They landed right in the middle of the crowd! A shockwave spread the moment their feet hit the ground. They attacked the demonstrators. Screams rang out, some swallowed by the rain. Light sparkled, and several demonstrators fell. The Slivons emerged from their bodies. The moment they touched the ground, they evaporated and vanished into nothingness. The patterns on the CR's clothing glowed a toxic green, and light flashed in places. Without warning, a massive explosion erupted. One person's body parts were flung in different directions, hurling everyone within a 2-meter radius away. Kilan immediately grabbed her and held her tightly. They rolled together down the street until they slid to a stop. Her ears rang, and for a moment, she couldn't hear anything at all. Soon, they came to rest in a puddle. Hesitantly, she freed herself from his embrace, biting her lip as she examined him, hoping he hadn't suffered serious injuries. His pant leg was torn at the knee. One lens of his glasses was cracked. It was surprising he hadn't lost them. His cheek and lower lip were scraped, a slight swelling forming. Had she been hurt? Her body felt numb. Kilan immediately took advantage of the brief pause and ran with her in tow toward the nearest alley. Several people in blue uniforms rushed past them, not noticing them in the alley. Sins! Unlike the others, these Sins wore gold-black helmets with visors. They also hauled around a boiler-like device with various buttons. Despite its weight, they moved swiftly. Did the load not bother them at all? A CR failed to turn around in time and was struck by a Sin. The Sin hit him with a black powder, while other Sins raised their hands and pulled him back. What kind of gloves were they wearing? In a 4-person formation, they threw the CR off balance. Each of them stood at an imaginary corner, forming a square. Though the CR tried to flee, he was pulled back by some kind of magnetism. Was this how the Sins fought? They gained control of the situation almost instantly. In the darkness, she couldn't make out any other CRs. "Your friends abandoned you," one of the Sins called out to the CR lying on his back. "Such bad luck." The CR started laughing. "After all these years, you still don't know our philosophy, little Sin?" One of the Sins delivered a powerful kick. Judging by her build, she appeared female. "Shut up! You're so arrogant! And yet humans need us, just as much as we need them." What does she mean by that? The CR's mask slipped, revealing his face. He looked young, no more than 15. He was bleeding lightly, yet he didn't lose his cheeky smile. "Cute kick. Want to give me another?" She kicked him again with full force, this time hitting his head directly. "I told you to shut up. You're alone. Your comrades fled, and you will—" "We win or die together," he shouted, raising his fist like a victor. From an ambush, another CR returned and struck the chin hard in the back. Other CRs carried off their injured comrade and leapt away with him. How were they able to jump so high? "Let's go," Kilan whispered, and she tore herself away from the scene, even though it was difficult. The alley grew narrower, but eventually they reached a street. They thought they were safe, when suddenly a bolt of lightning struck the ground. A CR stood on the roof and leapt down toward them with ease. He landed smoothly on hands and feet. "Looks like today's my lucky day," he murmured. The president's stepdaughter. Her breath caught. Even though she'd pulled the hood of her rain jacket low over her face, he recognized her, while most Slivons barely spared her a glance when she went shopping. Trembling, she hid behind Kilan. "A CR," Kilan whispered, frozen. The CR held a trident crackling with electricity, visible and audible. Jiyan stepped back slightly. The CR's gaze fell on Kilan. "You look very much like her, I must admit." "What?" "Your mother," he replied and charged at them. He aimed for Jiyan and was just about to touch her with the trident when Kilan spread his arms and stepped in front of her. A violent electric shock surged through his body, and he screamed. The CR abruptly pulled the weapon back. "You're human." "Yes," Kilan croaked. His hair stood on end. Even beneath the hood, she could see what the electricity had done to him. He twitched uncontrollably, his teeth chattering. Exhausted, he approached the CR and touched his shoulder. Another shock surged through his body until the CR recoiled and broke the connection. Kilan dropped to his knees, bracing himself with his hands, panting. "Man, that hurts." The CR pondered for a moment. "I remember. He's the one Wenjana saved before a Slivon could take him over." Kilan turned and looked Jiyan in the eyes. How could they ever forget that night? The hissing arrow that had flown past her so closely. Suddenly, the CR pulled down his mask and pushed back his hood, fully revealing his face. For a fraction of a second, Jiyan's breath was stolen from her once more. "Liam?" she whispered, her eyes widening. The CR looked at her, his mouth falling open. Then he shook his head and sighed. "My name is Slivon." She took several steps back. Since when had he... "Can we join you, Slivon?" Kilan asked bluntly, standing on shaky legs. "But a friend of ours isn't here. Jiyan has to be with us." In the distance, another explosion echoed, and a powerful gust of wind spread. Slivon turned toward it. Shortly after, a shrill whistle sounded. He adjusted his mask and pulled up his hood. "I have to go now." "Please protect Jiyan with everything you have," Kilan shouted as the CR leapt upward from one building to the next. Though he stood on nothing, he clung to the glass facade of a house. How did he do that? He looked down at them. "Come in 1 week, at midnight, to the border toward Lansing. We'll be there to pick you up." Then he detached himself from the glass, and just before falling, he pushed off and reached the next building. "Just 1 more week," Kilan said. His shoulders slumped. He placed a hand over his heart. "Then we'll have made it." "1 week," she repeated, lowering her gaze. 1 week.